The Montana wind was cold that morning when Jack Callahan rode into the high valley he'd just bought. For years, Jack had worked the cattle trails from Texas to Wyoming, saving every dollar he could. When word came about a piece of forgotten land up in the pines, a ranch with a cabin, sitting by a lake, he didn't think twice. The seller had told him it was old but sturdy. A real bargain for a man who ain't scared of silence. Jack wasn't. Silence was all he'd known since his wife died 4 winters back. So he signed the papers without ever seeing the place, hitched up his horse and rode north to claim his new start. By the time he reached the clearing, the sun was already dipping behind the ridge. The cabin stood there, tucked between whispering pines and golden grass. Smoke curled from the chimney. That made Jack pause. He hadn't hired anyone to tend the place. Maybe a squatter, he thought. Maybe just kids camping out. He tightened his reins, his eyes narrowing as he guided the horse closer. The closer he got, the clearer the signs. Freshly cut wood stacked by the porch, flowers in a cracked jar, and boot prints too small to be his. Someone was living here. He dismounted quietly, his boots crunching on gravel as he stepped up to the door. The smell of cooking drifted out, something with herbs and smoke. He raised his hand to knock, but before he could, the door opened, and there she was. A woman stood in the doorway, holding a cast-iron pan in one hand and a startled look in her eyes. She was young, maybe late 20s, her auburn hair tied loosely, a few strands catching the firelight from inside. Her dress was simple but neat, patched in places but clean. For a long second, neither of them spoke. The only sound was the wind and the soft crackle of the fire behind her. "This your place?" she asked finally, voice steady but cautious. Jack blinked. "Reckon it is now. Bought it last month." Her eyes widened slightly. "You bought my home?" That's when the truth unfolded. Her name was Clara Whitmore, and she'd been living in that cabin for almost 3 years. She said her father built it before he died. The land had gone unpaid and was sold off without her knowing. She had nowhere else to go. Jack looked around the little cabin. It was spotless, with care in every corner, handmade curtains, a repaired table, herbs drying near the window. This wasn't some squatter's hideout. It was a life. For a moment, Jack didn't know what to say. He'd come looking for solitude, not someone else's sorrow. But something about her voice and the quiet strength behind it stopped him from asking her to leave. Instead, he took off his hat, stepped back and said, "Maybe we should talk about it inside." Clara hesitated, then nodded. They sat across from each other, 2 strangers sharing stew in a cabin that now belonged to one, but had been home to the other. The firelight softened the tension, and stories began to spill about her father, about the storms she'd survived, about the wolves she'd chased from her door with nothing but a lamp and courage. Jack listened quietly, realizing he hadn't heard another person's story in years. By the time the moon climbed high, the tension had turned into something unspoken, understanding, maybe even trust. When Jack finally stood, he said gently, "You don't have to leave tonight." Clara looked up from the fire. "And after tonight?" she asked. He looked away toward the door, the forest, the stars. "We'll figure it out come morning." That night, as he lay awake in the barn, the sound of the wind through the pines and the faint hum of her voice from inside the cabin felt like something he hadn't known he missed. Life. The next morning, Jack woke to the smell of coffee. The door to the cabin was open, and sunlight spilled across the porch. Clara stood there, pouring coffee into 2 mugs, her red hair glowing in the early light. She handed him one without a word. He took it, nodded, and the silence between them wasn't awkward this time. It was peaceful. Over the next days, Jack and Clara began to coexist in that clearing as if time itself had slowed. He worked the fences and cleared brush, while she tended to the garden and cooked by the fire. He taught her how to saddle a horse. She showed him how to fish the lake better than any cowboy ever could. Slowly, the boundaries between his land and her home began to fade, but the world outside their valley didn't stay silent. A man from town rode up one afternoon, bringing a letter from the land office confirming the purchase. Clara's name wasn't on any deed, and she had no legal claim. Her face went pale when she saw the seal. Jack could see what it meant. She'd have to leave. That night he found her packing her things quietly. He leaned on the doorframe and said, "You don't have to go." "Clara." She looked at him, her voice breaking. "I can't stay in a place that isn't mine." He stepped closer. "It wasn't mine either, not really." "Not till you." The words hung there, simple but heavy. She didn't answer, just stood there, eyes wet, shoulders trembling. He reached out and touched her hand gently. "You've made this cabin a home, Clara. I bought the land, sure, but you brought it back to life." For the first time she smiled, just a little. The kind of smile that heals something deep. The following weeks turned into something new. They rebuilt the barn together, repaired the fences, and by the time the first snow fell, two people who had nothing but loss behind them found something worth keeping ahead. Belonging. One evening, as they watched the sunset over the pines, Jack said quietly, "Funny thing, I bought this place sight unseen, thinking I'd find peace." Clara turned toward him. "And did you?" He smiled faintly. "No, I found you." The story of the rancher and the forgotten woman spread quietly. Through nearby towns, folks said it was proof that sometimes the things we don't plan for end up being the ones that save us. And if you're still listening to this story, maybe it means you believe in second chances too. Subscribe for more stories like this, of love, fate, and the quiet miracles that still ride through the Old West, because somewhere out there, another story is waiting to be told.